sweethearts with a bright future ahead of them.
They were that couple that were both star athletes on their team.
They just were kind of inseparable and always laughing, always smiling.
But their happiness is shattered by an unspeakable tragedy.
His body was in a burn pile.
This was something that had to sit and fester in someone for it to be so extreme.
The search for answers will shake up this small town.
There were notes that said they had killed her boyfriend and that she would be next.
And reveal a killer more cunning than police could ever imagine.
I remember the young man telling us immediately, I didn't shoot him, I didn't kill him, but this is what I did.
I still can't wrap my head around the fact that two high school sweethearts wound up like this.
July 9th, 2010. It's a humid summer morning in the small southern town of Arkadelphia, Arkansas. At around 7:30 a.m., the local police department receives a frantic call from a longtime resident named Mary Whitaker.
She was very concerned that she had not seen her son, Dominique Whitaker, since the late evening hours of July 4th.
Mary says that 27-year-old Dominique still lives at home, but he also has 2 kids and a long-term girlfriend across town.
I was like, well, they're probably had like a little me time type thing and he'll be on. So I said, don't stress about it. By Friday, which I think it may be 2 days later, I said, okay, we still can't get in contact with him. He's not answering his phone. Even if I didn't talk to him every day, he talked to my mom every day. So that just don't seem right.
I had never actually met Dominique, but I knew some of his family through working in this community. Dominique, to me, was a quiet guy who got up, he went to work. He seemed to be a loyal friend. We had no reason to think anything had happened. We just knew that he was missing and had not contacted anyone. His mother requested officers come to her residence. I immediately responded. My goal on July 9th is to learn everything I could learn as quickly as possible about Dominique Whitaker.
Growing.
He was a good kid. He didn't talk a lot. He only talked like when he needed to. He didn't have like much conversation.
We first became friends, I think it was like in the 4th to 5th grade, playing basketball.
Dominique's athletic ability earned him a spot on the Sparkman High School basketball team.
He was really good in basketball, and he enjoyed it. That was his love.
He played forward. He was averaging close to 30 points a game. Being the star basketball player, he was pretty popular. That's when we started hanging out and doing what guys do. Honest a girlfriend, I guess you could say. Dominique was one of those guys, he got a lot of attention from the ladies.
But Dominique only seemed to have an eye for one lady in particular. His high school classmate and fellow athlete, Kayla Nelson.
Kayla was an excellent athlete. She was kind of the team leader of our team a lot. She was point guard in the classroom. She was just a wonderful student. I mean, even the teachers, she was probably one of their favorite students. She was just a person you wanted to be her friend.
It wasn't long before Dominique and Kayla became the it couple of their high school.
They were that couple that were both star athletes on their team.
They just were kind of inseparable and always laughing, always smiling. Everybody thought that they were just the cutest couple, thought they fit together, kind of like peanut butter and jelly.
Both also seemed to have incredibly bright futures ahead of them.
He would like to continue playing basketball at the college level.
I believe Kayla wanted to be a physician or a doctor. I felt like she probably could do whatever she wanted to do, academically or athletically.
But just months into their senior year, the young couple hit an unexpected roadblock that would put their academic futures on hold.
Kayla had become pregnant at the end of her high school career.
She told our team probably when she was, I would guess, around 3 months, because she continued to play basketball up until we finished our season.
Dominique was very excited. He was also scared. He was always talking about how he wanted to be the best dad he could be.
When Dominique and Kayla graduated high school, the mom-to-be still managed a 4.0 GPA.
She was valedictorian in first class. She was very smart. She had multiple scholarships to go anywhere to school.
But with a baby on the way, the couple decided to make a home for themselves in Arkadelphia.
He didn't want to leave Kayla, and he didn't want to leave his baby, point blank. So he stayed. For him, that was more important than going.
2001, Dominique and Kayla welcomed a beautiful baby girl.
When she was born, he was just smiling from ear to ear. They did live together for a little bit after the baby was born, but it ended up then she going back and staying with her family, and he going back and staying with my mom. I think that financial responsibility was just not quite there for either one of them just yet to live and be able to take care of baby and pay bills.
2 years later, the birth of a second daughter brought the couple even more financial strain.
He was excited and nervous at the same time because in his head, more responsibility he has to make sure he can provide for, both kids.
By 2010, after 9 years together as parents, Dominique and Kayla finally seemed ready for a life on their own. Kayla had gotten a job as an assistant manager at a local restaurant, and her salary allowed her to start construction on a new home.
She seemed to be well on her way to possibly manager and maybe possibly even co-owner. A house was being built here in Clark County that Kayla was having constructed. There was talk that Dominique would move in.
I really felt like they would probably get married, kind of picket fence, that kind of deal. That was everybody's expectation, that they would do well and live a long, happy life.
But despite their hopes for a bright future, on July 9th, 2010, police are investigating why this beloved father of two has been missing for 5 days.
I met Miss Whitaker at the front porch of her residence. She was obviously upset. She was very concerned that Dominique was possibly in jeopardy. I asked Miss Whitaker, would she show me Dominique's room? I was there looking to see if anything was missing or not missing that possibly could start me on this investigation.
They didn't see anything that looked out of place to them. They asked Mary who would be the closest person, relationship-wise, to Dominique.
And so my mom said, well, Kayla would know, because Kayla's in this room all the time.
So Kayla was summoned to the house.
When Kayla arrives, police ask her when she last spoke with Dominique.
She told me she had not seen him since July 4th. She didn't know where he was at. She was very involved in her church.
Kayla had been to a week-long church camp, supervising children.
Kayla says that since she got back into town, she'd been so busy with work, she hadn't had a chance to catch up with Dominique.
I asked her, would she show me anything that might be missing? She rattled off 2 or 3 very small items.
So in my mind, I'm like, well, where the crap did he go? Did he take these things and he, decided to leave?
I asked, was he known to take trips and do anything? Go by himself and not report that to anyone? She told me no, that he was not known for that.
Before they leave the home, investigators ask Dominique's mother to detail any of her son's distinct physical traits.
He had a lot of hair, so my mom would always braid it up for him.
He would put beads in his braids, different colors. It's just different styles depending on her dad.
That week, Mary recalls Dominique adding blue beads to his braids.
He was last seen, his hair were in blue braids on July 4th. And with that, I searched, I worked around the clock. You want to try to work as quick as you can and efficiently as you can to find that person.
Coming up, detectives make a gruesome discovery.
When I seen the beads, I had a very sinking feeling. That's when we found no corroborating piece of evidence.
And the investigation kicks into high gear.
Did he owe someone any money? Was he involved in any criminal activity?
It's been 5 days since 27-year-old Dominique Whitaker disappeared from his Arkadelphia, Arkansas home.
I met with Miss Whitaker there at her house, and she explained to me that she had not had any contact with her son Dominique since July 4th.
After getting an account of the days leading up to Dominique's disappearance, investigators open a full missing persons investigation.
He talked to my mom every day. It's not like him not to call. It's not like him not to check in.
As word of Dominique's disappearance spreads throughout this small community, fear for his well-being continues to grow.
What could have happened to him? You think, could he have had a wreck and went down a ravine and people just have not found him yet?
Sheriff Jason Watson called me and told me of a missing person. When I got the information, I was just utterly shocked to learn that it was Dominique Whitaker, whom I went to school with.
Investigators fear that with every passing minute, the odds of finding Dominique alive lessen. In an effort to locate Dominique as soon as possible, investigators subpoena his phone records.
We knew that on phone records we couldn't get a GPS locator being cut off.
Dominique's bank records are even less revealing.
If he used a debit card anywhere, we might be able to track down that he's been in a store using his debit card, and or someone else may have been in a store using that. But he had no bank card, therefore there was no bank records that we could trace to track him down.
When officers check with Dominique's employer, they learn he hadn't been seen since before July 4th.
He didn't pick his check up, and it's not like him to miss work like that. That's when it started, scratching our head. I'm thinking, okay, this is not good.
So we knew that his money would have been limited at this point to travel. The most he could have had was $200 or $300 in cash to go somewhere. And in 2010, that wasn't going to take you far.
At the time, he didn't have a car, and so for the most part, to get around, he would, borrow his mom's car if need be.
He had no mode of transportation. He had no vehicle that belonged to him. So we knew that he was limited on how far he could travel unless he was with someone else. So as we're trying to track down and run down all these leads, we were immediately hit with dead-end roads.
Investigators talked to Dominique's closest friends to learn more about the shy father of two.
We began to dig into his world a little bit and kind of who he sees and who he talks to and where he goes. And one of the things we learn about him is he doesn't go a lot of places. He's a homebody, stays home a lot.
He had a very nice setup of video games and where he had interaction with different individuals that played video games across the country. And they would link up and talk and visit through these video gaming systems.
Detectives can't help but wonder, is it possible Dominique decided to meet up with one of his online video game friends in person?
We talked to online gaming systems. I spoke with individuals at different gaming businesses to learn how that works. We subpoenaed gaming records to try to get a hold of individuals.
Police make contact with Dominique's online friends, but soon learn they hadn't heard from Dominique either.
He had never not logged in when he was supposed to. They were concerned because it was just not his manner to do that, to be in zero contact.
As days pass, every lead lands investigators at an impasse.
He didn't have a lot of money on him. He had no mode of transportation. His friends had not seen him. Trusted confidants that were best friends had not talked to him. We couldn't track him down by cell phone, and there was no bank records to track him down, and has happened. And at that point, we have to look at who had a reason to hurt Dominique. Was he into a fight with anyone? Did he owe someone any money? Was he involved in any criminal activity?
But investigators find no evidence that Dominique has had any brushes with the law.
So I had searched everything I could find about Dominique, and I honestly would have believed that I would have found out had he been involved in anything criminal. He kind of minded his own business and worked and lived his own life.
He didn't associate with a criminal element. He was a low-risk victim, and so the number of potential suspects is pretty low. in that case.
Then, on July 15th, 6 days after Dominique was reported missing, a call comes in from neighboring Dallas County that changes everything.
A timber worker came to the area surveying the landscape and smelled something a little unusual.
And it was just a overpowering smell, he described. He was looking to see where that odor come from. He contacted the sheriff's office after he located what he thought was human remains. I was notified by our dispatch. As I responded to this location inside Dallas County, I observed a human skull in the upper torso rib cage area. It was hard to tell exactly what the manner of death or what mechanism of death was used. There had been the possibility of some animal activity on the bones. There was a very limited amount of the body left that we had.
When you reach a point when a body becomes skeletonized, it's almost always the case that you do not get a full skeleton. Things get scattered, animals scavenge.
When investigators move in for a closer look, they notice something disturbing.
I also observed some blue beads and what little bit of hair that was attached, which ultimately was a description that Dominique had blue beads on the day he was last seen. When I seen the beads, I had a very sinking feeling, and I felt very strongly that these were going to be Dominique's remains.
The remains were taken to the crime lab in Little Rock, and an autopsy was performed.
Through DNA, the remains are positively identified as 20.
I had a responsibility to Dominique before anybody else to find out what happened to me.
Although the medical examiner has only partial skeletal remains to examine, he is still able to determine a cause of death.
I was able to see that there was a gunshot projectile embedded into the spine. Anatomic location of that projectile could only mean one thing: the gunshot wound coming from the back of the body. This is a fatal shot, no question about it.
The weapon used was a 9mm handgun, and his back obviously was to the shooter, and he was falling forward when the shot was fired, like he was trying to get away from something.
Just as alarming is what happened to Dominique after he was killed.
It immediately became apparent that some of the bones were charred.
There was belief that there had been some attempt to get rid of the remains by fire.
The charring would indicate that there was an effort made to hide the fact that this individual had been shot. There's no explanation at the scene for that body having been charred. So now at the very least you have a body that's been dumped at that scene.
And they dumped him on the side of the road out in a rural part of the county that they didn't think was very heavily populated with traffic. So this led me to believe it was someone that knew the area. Now we had to find out who did it.
Coming up, a strange discovery leads investigators to a major break in the case.
It's just block letters, threats, as though it was written by a gang member.
It was very erratic writing style that said they had killed her boyfriend over their queen.
After Dominique Whitaker was reported missing in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, medical examiners have just identified his body through DNA testing.
I knew I had a responsibility to Dominique before anybody else to find out what happened to him. So even though it's a very sad time, you put those emotions away. And I always try to think of what could speak for me. And so you put those emotions away and you do what is right for Dominique and for Mary and Geisha.
When investigators break the news to Dominique's friends and family, they are devastated.
He said, it's him. That's when the reality sunk in. Because, you go on that hope thinking, he's coming back. He's coming back. I just can't wrap my head around it.
I immediately started crying. Everything went kind of blank up at that point.
Even with the discovery of Dominique's body, detectives are still at a loss for any solid suspects.
Dominic was a quiet guy, a loner, for the most part. Someone who would be a very low-risk victim.
If his kids were around, nothing else mattered. He didn't want to go out. He didn't care about his friends being there. He was all about those girls, no matter what.
He had been involved with Kayla on and off for an extensive period of time. He did not seem to be one that was out partying, not being non-responsible.
I think that was what was difficult for so many people, was it kind of hit really close to home that crimes can happen to anybody. That it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, it doesn't matter who you are, they can happen to anybody.
4 days after Dominique's remains are identified, an unusual turn of events leads investigators to their first major break in the case.
On Sunday, July 19th, I want to say it was roughly around 7 p.m., I had received a call from Kayla. Kayla was very frantic. She advised me that a friend of hers had went to her house here in Clark County and that there were notes taped on her garage door. And at that point, we met Kayla at her house.
We get there and someone has written on sheets of printer paper, copy paper, it's just block letters, threats, as though it was written by a gang member.
It was very erratic writing style that said they had killed her boyfriend over their queen, and it said bloods for life on it.
Was Dominique's murder somehow gang-related? To find out, officers spread out in search of any other clues around the house.
There were no signs of any forced entry on the residence, nothing of that nature whatsoever. Just 2 letters taped on the door. But there had been some cigarette butts at the residence.
In lead to a suspect. In the meantime, they warn Kayla to be careful.
I told her that these letters had me very concerned. I was worried about Kayla.
Detectives find the letters suspicious. While they appear to have been written by gang members, detectives have their doubts.
I'd be lying if I said we don't or have never had gang activity here. We've had some, but it's very unusual and out of place for this community.
Gangs have their own way of marking things that they've done to make it known that, hey, we're responsible for this. In training of gang violence and gang activities and things of that nature, training that I had been involved in over the years, letters like this have never been left.
Is it possible the letters had been forged in an attempt by Dominique's killer to throw police off their trail? Before detectives can make that determination, another letter shows up the next day, this time at the restaurant where Kayla works.
It was addressed to Kayla, telling Kayla that she would be next if she didn't know what was good for her, from the Blood Street Gang.
Once again, investigators doubt the letter's authenticity.
Dominic is a gamer. He's intelligent. He's definitely not the kind of guy that would be associated in any way with gang life.
I did not believe that this was the work of any organized street gang. This was more amateur and childish than an organized street gang would produce. We thought this was someone trying to throw law enforcement off the track of who was responsible.
Detectives hope DNA found on the cigarette butts recovered at Kayla's house will churn up a new lead, but it's another dead end.
The residence was under construction. There had been individuals working on the residence that smoked. However, they were never linked to any of this crime, and that was quickly and easily ruled out. Things got to a point that we had exhausted all other efforts of anyone that we thought was responsible for Dominique Whitaker's death.
With the fear that the case is growing cold, investigators decide to take a closer look at Dominique and Kayla's relationship.
The only person that was particularly close to him was Kayla.
In doing our interviews, asking anyone that knew Dominique and Kayla, we never had anyone say anything negative about them.
What I remembered them as was very devoted to each other, very protective of each other.
Broken up for a few months back in 2004.
He didn't tell me, what the reason or what was going on. He just, said that they weren't together anymore.
While they were on a break, Dominique had met a woman at a local club named Yolanda Muldrow.
They ended up, becoming friends and talking. He was kind of down about the situation that happened with them and Kayla, and when someone attracted to you, it makes you feel good.
It was almost an instant connection. We would hang out all night long, 3-4 days out of the week. He was a really, really great guy.
Police learned that Dominique and Yolanda were only together for 6 months before they lost touch. Then he got back together with Kayla.
I never wanted for our relationship to interfere with the relationship that he had with his kids. So we just kind of made the decision to always keep in touch, remain friends, and we would just break it off. Then I found out I was pregnant, and I told Dominique, this is, really, really weird. We were both back with our exes and, trying to figure this out. Then I had a miscarriage at home. I knew what was happening, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
But friends say nearly 5 years later, Dominique learned Yolanda received some shocking news after her miscarriage.
I stayed sick for about a month or two. Go back to the doctor. You're pregnant. No, not possible. I miscarried a baby. He said that I was pregnant with twins, ma'am. I lost one baby, kept the other one. By the time I found out all of these things were happening, me and Dominique lost touch. We lost communication. Dominique was not on social media at all. I did not have a phone number for him, and he didn't talk to very many people. I had to go through the child support office to find him. So by the time I was able to find him and reach out to him and let him know we had a child, she was 4 years old. We found out there was a child that he did not know anything about. And I remember talking, he's like, well, I got to get in touch with Yolanda so that I can meet my baby.
But as far as his friends and family are aware, Dominique had gone missing before he had the chance to reconnect with Yolanda face to face. Now detectives can't help but wonder if Kayla had discovered the secret behind Dominique's former flame.
There's some speculation that maybe Kayla found out about it and just in a violent fit of jealous rage.
Coming up, detectives identify a possible suspect from Dominique's past.
He and Dominique had become engaged in a verbal argument that turned physical.
And Kayla makes a bombshell revelation.
Y'all just don't know what I've been through.
She felt that she was in danger.
Why didn't you tell me? I'm scared.
After the murder of 27-year-old Dominique Whitaker, police have discovered his relationship with Kayla Nelson was more complicated than they realized.
Now we know he had a child with another woman, Yolanda. And so we were kind of suspicious at that point of Kayla.
To find out more, detectives call Kayla in for a formal interview on July 28th.
Our approach on the 28th was to start pinning Kayla down. So we brought her in to the Arkadelphia Police Department. And through that interview, ultimately, she went from not knowing anything, as she has maintained throughout this whole event, to having knowledge of Dominique's death.
Kayla tells police that she last saw Dominique the afternoon of July 4th.
Let's start back out on the night of the 4th. You get off work at Andy's at what time?
At 2, or a little after 2.
All right, take it from there.
I went, picked him up to get something to eat, took him back home, dropped him off.
Kayla says she spent the rest of the evening with her 2 daughters and a friend out at her nearly completed house.
A friend of hers, Jarrell, had come over to see Kayla at her house, the house that was being constructed. There had been a barbecue, and she was also going to shoot fireworks that night.
Kayla tells investigators that Dominique showed up to her house that night around 11 p.m. while she was still hanging out with her friend, Jarrell. Kayla claims that Dominique hadn't been happy to see her spending time with another man.
Now, you, Jarrell were there, and where did Dominic come in? He just show up at the door? Or he show up outside? I mean, you
When we walked outside, he was there.
he was just standing there? Was he mad?
Yeah.
What was he saying?
That's him, Jarrell, why was he around me?
She said Jarrell and Dominique had become engaged in a verbal argument that turned physical.
They
Trump. And
Who said that? Who said let me use my trunk? Did Dominique let him get to his trunk? Okay. And then Dominique takes off running. That's when Jarrell shoots him in the back. Twice.
She had led the law enforcement to believe from day one, and that is that she didn't know anything about Dominique's disappearance. Now, Kayla ultimately identifies Jarrell as being the offender that killed Dominique.
But why are these details only coming out now?
Obviously, with a statement like that, law enforcement's going to follow up on that statement and test the veracity of it.
The next morning, investigators bring 24-year-old Jarrell Yarber in for an interview.
We tell him that she's accusing you. She says you're involved. In fact, she says you're the shooter. What say you?
When confronted by investigators, Jarrell quickly opens up.
I remember the young man telling us immediately, I didn't shoot him, I didn't kill him, but this is what I did.
Jarrell tells investigators that in the early morning hours of July 10th, he'd received a frantic phone call from Kayla.
Kayla asked him to help her do something. He responded to Kayla's address that night after he got off work, where he observed Dominique Whitaker. His body was in a burn pile.
Jarrell says Kayla told him she had been fighting with Dominique and accidentally shot him.
When she reached out to him, I think he wanted to help her.
She shot him, and then she tried to burn the body. Didn't have enough fuel to do that. Then she decided to dump the body. She got Jarrell to help her do that.
Jarrell says he helped Kayla place Dominique's remains in a Rubbermaid tote.
At that point, Kayla and Jarrell put it in the back of Jarrell's vehicle and drove it and dumped it on the side of the road, just a few miles from where Kayla lived.
You could tell this was not something that he normally would be involved in whatsoever. And I believe that this is just unfortunate for Jarrell, that he helped a friend, but Jarrell was no killer whatsoever.
Jarrell was charged with abuse of a corpse and hindering apprehension.
Coming up, investigators confront Kayla.
There was fear all over her face. She realized the gravity of the situation.
Investigators in Arkadelphia, Arkansas have just charged 24-year-old Jarrell Yarber for his role in the murder of Dominique Whitaker.
Jarrell was cooperating and he was arrested. At that time, the decision was made that we were going to interview Kayla once again, but I was going to change my approach that I had been taking with Kayla. She was going to have to tell the truth.
Determined to get the truth, investigators bring Kayla in for another interview.
All this time, we've been running this round robin circle, and we're trying to figure out how to correct the mistakes. And the only way to correct them is to get the truth out.
I had to tell her that, Kayla, you're not being accurate about these things. You've told us Jarrell's done this. Nobody's done this. You don't know how it happened. You went all the way around the world, and now we're back here again.
You could tell she was terrified. There was fear all over her face. She realized the gravity of the situation.
The information provided to us was from her, and she offered multiple conflicting accounts, and ultimately we were not credible.
Y'all just don't know what I've been through. Yeah.
Kayla, I wish you would have told us. Why did you tell me all those days? Why all those days I called you?
Scared.
Confronted with Jarrell's confession, Kayla finally admits that she was the one who got into a heated argument with Dominique and shot him. But Kayla is adamant it had been an act of self-defense.
She advised that she felt that she was in danger and that Dominique had punched on her for 10 years. And she felt that she had to do that to protect herself.
She had not mentioned domestic abuse at all, but now she's all about it. Although we didn't have any evidence of him ever being abusive.
Kayla claims that after she realized Dominique was dead, she became afraid and tried to cover up the incident.
She then drug the body to a burn pile on the property. And then she placed blankets and cardboard boxes on top of him and set him on fire.
Then Kayla left for her church camping trip.
They have a camp that week. She comes back. We're reported that July 10th is when his remains were placed in a Rubbermaid tote.
Kayla also admits that she forged the gang letters left at her home and work.
She had no emotion whatsoever. No emotion, much less remorse.
Kayla Nelson is charged with first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse.
I could not imagine or fathom that was what occurred. Somebody must be wrong.
I still can't wrap my head around the fact that two high school sweethearts wound up like this.
Everybody's question is why? Because if you didn't want to be with him anymore, just leave him alone.
As attorneys for both sides prepare for trial, prosecutors look into Kayla's claims of physical abuse by reaching out to one woman who would know firsthand about Dominique's treatment of women, his ex-girlfriend, Yolanda Muldrow.
He was always really mild-mannered with me. We didn't do the arguing and the dramatics. As far as I know, with me and Kayla, there were never any domestic disturbances. He had never hit her or anything. I really feel like Kayla killed him when she found out about my daughter. I think that she was jealous. It's just, the timing of the way it all happened. It hurts as soon as, we think, hey, we found him, he wants to be a part of your life. He's taken from her. Kayla knew about Yolanda. And I guess anyone would be kind of upset about that. We got a whole baby. Not just that you're with somebody else, but we have a whole child now involved, which means now this child's going to be in our lives.
Authorities also believe that Kayla's motive for killing Dominique might have been born out of her resentment towards him for holding her back from a life she felt she deserved.
She was almost a caretaker for him. He rarely left home. She worked all the time. She would bring him meals, and he would never leave his computer screen or whatever he was playing his games on. She just reached the end of her willingness to take care of Dominic.
It wasn't self-defense. It wasn't a crime of passion. This was something that had to, sit and fester in someone for it to be so extreme. I believe that she wanted a life without him. And I feel like the only way that she could do it was
Planning to shoot him. I think she was triggered, and so something in her snapped, and boom.
On October 18th, 2011, 28-year-old Kayla Nelson pleads guilty to first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. The judge sentences her to 31 years in prison.
I never cared about what the time she got. It didn't make a difference to me. It wasn't going to bring it back.
In December 2011, 25-year-old Jarrell Yarber pleads guilty to abuse of a corpse and hindering apprehension. He receives a sentence of 493 days in prison and 18 years probation.
It always bothered me that she involved him. I mean, if she hadn't contacted him, he wouldn't have come over there, and that resulted in a felony conviction for him.
For those who knew Kayla and Dominique, it's a tragic ending to a once storybook romance.
It's very sad. Kayla was a bright young lady with two beautiful little girls. The world was at her fingertips. There is no telling the things that Kayla could have accomplished in this world with her life.
It was a tragedy that Dominique was killed. It was a tragedy that these two girls' lives would change forever. And it was a tragedy that so many lives were affected by this.
He was a good-hearted person. He was loved by everybody that came in his life. And I just want him to know that we love him, we miss him, and that everybody's fine. And to rest on.
For more information on Snapped, go to oxygen.com.